The Pentagon has drawn a line in the sand, and Anthropic is standing on the other side in an unprecedented move. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has delivered what can only be described as a Friday ultimatum to the AI company. The message is stark and unambiguous: agree to allow your technology to be used in all lawful military applications, or face complete removal from the Pentagon's supply chain. This is not a routine contract dispute. Hegseth summoned Anthropic's CEO, Dario Amodei, directly to Washington for a tense meeting on Tuesday. The Defense Secretary did not mince words. He made clear that if Anthropic does not comply, the Pentagon is prepared to invoke the Defense Production Act. This Cold War-era law would essentially allow the military to access Anthropic's tools regardless of the company's consent. The stakes here are enormous. Anthropic holds a $200 million contract with the Department of Defense. More significantly, its Claude model is currently the only AI system approved for classified United States military missions. We are talking about technology that has already been used in high-stakes operations, including the January capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro. So, what is the friction point? Anthropic has drawn what it calls red lines. The company refuses to permit its technology to be used for mass surveillance of Americans, or for the development of fully autonomous weapons systems. Anthropic has expressed serious concerns about deploying advanced AI in scenarios where there is no human in the loop, arguing that even state-of-the-art models are not yet reliable enough for those contexts. The Pentagon views these restrictions as unacceptable limitations. Hegseth is already in discussions with alternative AI developers, including Google, OpenAI, and Elon Musk's Xi. The message is clear: the military wants unrestricted access to AI capabilities, and it is willing to strong-arm companies to get it. So who exactly is Anthropic, and why does the Pentagon care so much about getting access to their technology? Anthropic was founded in 2021 by Dario and Daniela Amodei, two former OpenAI researchers who left that company over growing concerns about AI safety. They took roughly a dozen colleagues with them. Their mission was refreshingly clear from the start: build AI systems that are not just powerful but genuinely safe and beneficial for humanity. The company developed something they call constitutional AI. It is essentially a framework where their AI models are trained to follow a set of principles like being helpful, harmless, and honest, instead of relying purely on human feedback, which can be inconsistent. They give their models an explicit constitution to follow. This approach was supposed to make their systems more predictable and less likely to cause harm. Anthropic positioned itself as the responsible actor in an industry racing toward increasingly powerful systems, while competitors rushed to release ever more capable models. Anthropic emphasized caution. They published research on AI risks. They talked about the importance of not cutting corners on safety. That positioning attracted significant investment. Google committed billions to the company, and it attracted government attention too. Here's where things get complicated. Anthropic already has a $200 million contract with the U.S. Defense Department. Their AI model Claude is currently the only system approved for classified military missions, working through a partnership with defense contractor Palantir. The company has also worked with the CIA and other intelligence agencies, but Anthropic drew lines in the sand. They refused to allow their technology to be used for mass surveillance of Americans. They blocked development of fully autonomous weapons systems with no human oversight. They argued that current AI systems simply are not reliable enough for lethal missions without humans in the loop. These were not arbitrary restrictions, they came directly from the company's founding philosophy about AI safety. The irony is striking, the very company that built its reputation on responsible AI development now finds itself under immense pressure to abandon some of those very principles. So what exactly does the phrase "all lawful military applications" actually mean in practice? On the surface, it sounds straightforward enough. If something is legal, the military should be able to use AI for it. But dig a little deeper, and you find yourself in territory that is far from simple. Let us start with the uncontroversial end of the spectrum. The Pentagon already uses AI for logistics optimization, predicting when equipment needs maintenance, and analyzing satellite imagery. These are the bread and butter military applications that save time, money, and even lives. Most people would agree these are reasonable uses of powerful technology. But then we move into murkier waters. Intelligence analysis sounds benign enough until you consider what that might include. According to reports, Anthropic has specifically resisted allowing its technology for mass surveillance of Americans. The company has drawn what it calls a red line here, even when such surveillance might be perfectly legal under current law. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Just because something is lawful, does that automatically make it appropriate? The real flashpoint, though, is autonomous weapons systems. This is where the debate becomes intense. Anthropic has expressed deep concern about its AI models being used in lethal missions without a human in the loop. Their argument is that current systems simply are not reliable enough for life and death decisions. Now here is where things get complicated. International law has not kept pace with AI capabilities. There are massive gray areas where something might technically be lawful simply because no one has gotten around to regulating it yet. For Anthropic, this is not just about following Pentagon directives, it is about wrestling with questions that have no easy answers. When does lawful become unethical? Where does national security end and overreach begin? These are the questions that no ultimatum can easily resolve. Let us talk about what it really means when the Pentagon threatens to cut a company out of its supply chain. This is not just about losing a contract, it is about survival. Anthropic currently holds a $200 million contract with the Defense Department, but more importantly, Claude is the only AI model approved for classified military missions. That exclusivity gave Anthropic a privileged position. Now it has become leverage. Secretary Hegseth understands something crucial about the defense industry. Once you are in the ecosystem, getting pushed out is devastating. It is not just lost revenue, it is lost credibility. Other government agencies take their cues from the Pentagon. Allies and partners look to these certifications as seals of approval. Lose that standing and you lose far more than one contract. The threat to invoke the Defense Production Act adds another layer of pressure. This Cold War-era law lets the government compel domestic industries to support national defense. It was used during the pandemic to force medical supply production. Now it could be weaponized to seize AI capabilities without negotiation. But here's where the strategy becomes clear. Hegseth is already talking to Google, OpenAI, and Elon Musk's Xi as potential replacements. He's not just pressuring Anthropic, he's showing the entire industry that compliance is the price of admission. The message is simple: play by our rules, or we will find someone who will. This is supply chain warfare. The government is not regulating from the outside, it is sitting at the negotiating table as both customer and gatekeeper for AI companies that have built their business models around government partnerships. That's an uncomfortable position. They need the contracts, the validation, and the access to classified data. that only the Pentagon can provide, and now they are discovering exactly what that dependence costs. This is the moment the AI safety movement has been dreading. Picture a conference room at the Pentagon, where Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei sat across from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. The message delivered was stark and simple: agree by Friday to let your technology be used in all lawful military applications, or face being cut out of the Pentagon's supply chain entirely. That is not a negotiation, that is an ultimatum. What makes this confrontation so significant is what Anthropic has been trying to protect. The company has drawn what it calls red lines. It refuses to allow its AI systems to be used for mass surveillance of American citizens. It refuses to permit deployment in autonomous weapons systems, where no human makes the final decision about lethal force. These are exactly the kinds of applications that AI safety advocates have warned about for years. But here is the uncomfortable reality sitting beneath all of this. Claude, Anthropic's flagship AI model, is currently the only system approved for classified United States military missions. The company holds a reported $200 million contract with the Defense Department. That money, that access, that position of influence, it all disappears if Anthropic holds firm. Hegseth has already made backup plans clear. He is in active discussions with Google, with OpenAI, with Elon Musk's Xi. The message is unmistakable: if Anthropic will not cross these red lines, someone else will. And for the AI safety movement, that raises a question that cuts to the heart of everything they believe. Can you actually shape how military AI develops if you refuse to participate, or does walking away simply hand that power to companies with fewer scruples? So what happens now? Anthropic faces three possible paths, and each one carries massive implications for the future of artificial intelligence. The first scenario is capitulation. Anthropic could agree to the Pentagon's demands by Friday, opening its technology to all lawful military applications. This would preserve their government contracts, including that reported $200 million deal with the Defense Department. But it would fundamentally transform what Anthropic represents. The company built its reputation on being safety first. Its own charter emphasizes responsible AI development. If leadership abandons those principles under pressure, they send a clear message that safety commitments are negotiable when enough money or power is on the table. The second scenario is refusal. Anthropic could hold firm on its red lines, refusing to allow its models in autonomous weapons systems or mass domestic surveillance. This would be a principled stand, but the consequences would be severe. Losing access to Pentagon contracts is just the beginning. Hegseth has threatened to invoke the Defense Production Act, a Cold War-era law that would let the government compel Anthropic's cooperation anyway. Being cut from defense supply chains is typically reserved for companies tied to foreign adversaries. That classification alone could devastate Anthropic's business relationships and stock value. The third path is a middle ground. Anthropic might negotiate selective applications, allowing some military uses while drawing harder lines on the most controversial ones. But this assumes the Pentagon is willing to compromise, and based on Hegseth's Friday deadline, that willingness seems limited. Behind all of this looms a larger question. If artificial intelligence becomes the backbone of military power, who actually controls it? The companies that build these systems, the government that funds and deploys them, or neither? What happens when the people who understand the technology best say it is not ready for certain uses, but the people with the legal authority disagree? The answer to that question will shape not just one company's future, but the entire relationship between Silicon Valley and Washington for decades to come.